I'm saying hello and thank you for joining us today. My name is the Reverend Angel Luis Rivera-Agosto, and I serve as the Community Engagement Senior Coordinator for Justice Initiatives for the National Benevolent Association of the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, and General Ministry of the Disciples Church. The nonprofit National Benevolent Association, also known as NBA, collaborates with leaders and health and social service organizations to strengthen and transform communities through compassion, healing, and justice. The NBA provides education, companionship, inspiration, and resources for organizational and leadership development for health and social service ministries. All of our work with partners is grounded in our historic mission of justice and advocacy. As we get started, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for future viewing on the web and on the NBA website at nbacares.org. nbacares.org. You may also follow along via automated transcription using the AI-generated captions. Look at the CC button at the bottom of your Zoom window. I am very pleased to welcome you to this webinar titled New Fruits from Wounded Soil, Pentecost and Restorative Justice. Before we hear from our speakers, I want to offer a brief pastoral reflection that holds these two words together, Pentecost and Restorative Justice, as good news for wounded people and for wounded communities. As we get started, this webinar is being recorded, as I told you, and will be available for future viewing on the NBA website. So please stay tuned. Pentecost begins in the book of Acts, specifically in its second chapter, not with a triumphant march, but with a community still carrying fear and grief. Gather in the room, remembering a public execution and wondering what comes next. And then the Spirit comes not to erase the wounds, but to meet them. A sound like rushing wind, tongues like fire, and suddenly people who had been scattered by violence and silence begin to speak and to understand one another. The miracle was not based on perfect speech or even clarity of message. The miracle was and still is a renewed relationship. The Spirit makes it possible for people to come out of hiding, to tell the truth, to listen across difference, and to build a new kind of community. That is why Pentecost is a deeply liberating story. It's God's no to the powers that thrive on fragmentation, on the stories that claim some people are disposable, or some people are beyond repair, or some voices don't matter, or even some harm should be hidden, or some pain should be carried alone. No, the Spirit disrupts that logic. The Spirit creates people who can name what happened, grieve what was lost, and still imagine a future beyond mere survival. Pentecost is the birth of a community that refuses to let trauma have the last word. At its heart, restorative justice is also a Spirit-shaped refusal. It rejects the notion that justice is only punishment, isolation, and exile. It rejects the lie that accountability means humiliation or that safety can be built only through cages and banishment. Instead, restorative justice asks different questions. Who was harmed? What do they need? Who is responsible? What must be done to repair what can be repaired and to transform what made the harm possible? It centers those most affected, tells the truth without excuses, and seeks accountability that is real because it is intentional. When we say new fruits from wounded soil, we are not romanticizing suffering. We are naming a hard, holy truth. God can bring life where systems have sown death. The Spirit can grow something new in places marked by harm through practices of truth telling, lament, responsibility, and repair and repair. In restorative circles, people speak from their lives and are heard. At Pentecost, people, or the goal is not to pretend nothing happened, but to make room for honest healing and for a community strong enough to hold both accountability and dignity. As part of NBA Justice Initiatives, we come to this conversation with the progressive and pastoral hope that faith communities can be places where the Spirit's fire doesn't burn people up, but instead lights the way toward liberation, especially for those harmed by violence, racism, poverty, and a justice systems too often shaped by punishment rather than restoration. May this webinar help us listen deeply, learn concrete practices, and widen our moral imagination so that we might become Pentecost people, brave enough to face harm, humble enough to repair, and committed enough to build a world where healing is possible. That is the conversation our speakers are guiding us into today. It is my honor to introduce them. First, I want to present to you, or to introduce to you, the Reverend Nora Jacob. Reverend Nora Jacob serves as the NBA's Restorative Justice Consultant and as a Minister of Social Justice for Covina Community Church, the UCC congregation. Nora has been a restorative justice practitioner and program lead at California Institution for Men, one of California's 31 state prisons for adults, for the past 12 years. She also founded and leads a nonprofit organization called Restoration and Resilience Alliance, and she's also the co-convener, along with with myself, for the Prison and Jail Ministries peer group, one of the peer groups from our program, from Community Engagement Program at MBA. So welcome and thank you for being here, dear Nora. Blessings be to you. And along with Nora, we have Mr. James Sharif Menefield. He earned an associate degree from Chaffetz College in Chino, California, with a 4.0 GPA and graduated as his class valedictorian while incarcerated. In addition to doing paralegal work, he has contributed significantly to restorative justice initiatives from behind bars, working directly with communities and individuals impacted by the justice system. In February of 2025, James appeared before California's Board of Parole hearings and was granted parole at his initial hearing after only 4 minutes of deliberation from the parole commissioners. Upon his release from prison last June, Mr. Menefield, also known as Sharif, founded his own freelance paralegal business. He currently also attends California State University in Los Angeles, where he finished his first semester with straight A's, and is currently taking 18 units this semester. And he is doing way good in this last semester as we hear some minutes before starting this webinar. He looks to finish, and he finished with straight A's as well. So welcome, Sharif, and very thankful and proud to have you here, my friend.
Thank you, Reverend Angel Luis. It's a pleasure to be here as well.
For this first round of conversation, Reverend Jacob and Sharif will have approximately 20 minutes. Then when we will open the floor for questions from our audience, either via chat or through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screens. Um, and as you try to speak, and I think the mute button was active, and Nora, if you can have some opportunity to say hello to our audience, and then to begin this challenging and impactful conversation with Sharif, please go ahead, and thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angel Luis. And friends out there in webinar land, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Please call me Nora. I'm not used to Reverend or Jacob. It's part of restorative justice practice, actually. And Sharif, thank you for being here. I appreciate that you're doing this with us. So let's jump in. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
It's a lot to unpack. So where would you like me to start?
I'd like you to give, if you can, an overview of your life and what put you into this webinar today. So start from the beginning, but you have like 2 minutes to summarize you as an overview. This is not an easy question, folks.
It's definitely not. My life has been a life of tragedy, trauma, death, destruction, but also restoration.
Yeah.
So I was born in 1982. My father went to prison 9 months after I was born, and where he remained my entire life. My mother practically raised me with my grandmother for the first 6 years of my life. My grandmother died on January 30th, 1989. What's interesting about that date is that my mother died on January 30th, 2026,
Man.
the same day.
Yeah.
But that's another story for another time. It's just the dates are interesting.
Yeah.
So, at my grandmother's funeral, my mother unfortunately became addicted to crack cocaine, and I had to go live with my grandfather for between the ages of 6 and 9. During this time, I learned my love for education while at the same time being a witness to alcoholism, domestic violence, and also being subjected to repeated emotional, physical, and sexual abuse by my neighbor throughout my years with my grandfather. My grandfather almost died from alcohol poisoning when I was 9, which my mother had to come back and get me. Once between the ages of 9 and 12, I can literally say that I've attended every elementary school in South Central Los Angeles.
Man.
Because we moved almost every 30 to 60 days. Um, so, and I never attended high school in my life. I've never set foot on a high school campus in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And so at the age of 12, my mother and I moved to Long Beach after a particularly brutal domestic violence incident. And it was in Long Beach where she became addicted again to crack cocaine and got exposed to prostitution. And we ended up we literally lived in every hotel on the stretch of Pacific Coast Highway between Long Beach Boulevard and Obispo. I know every motel on that stretch.
Yeah.
Because we lived in them. So September 6, 1995, the day before I turned 13, I was taken from my mother and I was sent to McLaren Children's Center. The now infamous McLaren Children's Center.
Infamous, yes.
And everything they talk about on the news, I experienced it in that place. So when I was 13 years old, I was accused of a crime in McLaren Children's Center, and I was arrested and I was placed in juvenile hall. While in juvenile hall, the judge found me guilty of the crime. It was a nonviolent and non-serious crime. And against every recommendation from every law enforcement official, the judge sent me directly to the California Youth Authority.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So what's significant about the California Youth Authority is that this was a place that had a 93% violent recidivism rate for juveniles. So 9 out of 10 children that was in that place eventually got released and came back within 3 years for a violent crime. It was in this place that I learned violence. I was raped 3 times within the first 3 weeks of my stay in this place. And I cried out to staff for help. No one helped me. That is until my so-called homie gave me a knife and said, "This will help you." And it did. It stopped the abuse. But then I ended up becoming the abuser. I ended up becoming very violent and callous and reckless. So much so that between the ages of 14 and 18, I spent 95% of my time in solitary confinement. Every birthday between 14 and 18 was spent in solitary confinement. So I was released under those circumstances. And I was released into the community very callous, very violent, very out of control, and wanting to, in dealing with the shame of being sexually abused
Mm-hmm.
and wanting to escape that persona, wanting to escape that. And I escaped, I called myself trying to escape that through violence. And unfortunately, on September 3rd, 2001, about 4 months after I was released, I made the tragic decision to murder Reese Renee Sims. Um, I murdered her.
Mm-hmm.
I was convicted of first-degree murder,
Mm-hmm.
and I was sentenced to 50 years to life in state prison.
Oh, Sharif.
That was the last day I hugged my mother before my release in June. That was the last day I hugged my mother. That was a day that I was told that I was going to die in prison. And but I didn't believe it.
Mm.
Well, excuse me, I believed it. And I got to a space where I believed that I deserved that.
Ah,
Because people that do what I do, that's a place for you.
yeah.
And I had become so accountable for my actions that I believed that I deserved to die in prison. And it didn't matter to me whether I got out or not. I was just in a space where it's like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't continue. I can't kill anyone else. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years, people like yourself, incarcerated individuals who believe in restorative justice like yourself, embraced me,
Mm.
and they started asking me the hard questions, and they
Yeah.
started challenging me. And eventually, this is how I got to where I am, in a nutshell.
I'm just going to take a deep breath here. And you should too. Not to should you, but yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's a hard story to hear. And I'm sure it's a hard story to tell. So you're 6'6" now. I know this, folks, because I've seen him standing up. And I'm 5'4", so it feels, Sharif feels tall. When did you get tall, and what was being a Black teenager like in Los Angeles in really the worst juvenile detention facilities that California or probably the nation had to offer?
Well, first, I'm going to unpack my size. What stands out to me today is that I read my probation officer report from when I was 13.
Mm.
And probation officer, his name was Anthony Schneider. He remarked, before me is a 5'7", 13-year-old, fairly large Black youth for his age.
Oh, man.
That's the picture that was painted of me
Mm.
in the probation report. Like, so in addition to being out of control, in addition to being very angry, this is a fairly large kid.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to unpack that years later.
Mm-hmm.
But my experiences in South Central growing up was constant poverty, scarcity mindset. Nothing will ever last because everything was temporary. Relationships don't last because
Mm.
what is love,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Welfare,
Mm.
constantly going hungry, a constant state of fear. Because in addition to the murder and violence that I was seeing on the streets, I was also dealing with violence in my household
Oh,
because my
yeah.
mother's boyfriends were all very abusive.
Mm.
They were all manipulative. They were all
Yeah.
womanizing. Um, Growing up, watching my mother get beat up by her pimps because she didn't bring in enough money.
Mm.
Those were my experiences in South Central Los Angeles. In addition to the gang lifestyle being glorified in movies,
Mm-hmm.
Menace to Society, Boys in the Hood, um, Juice, all these movies that we
Yeah.
grew up watching, wanting to emulate. We wanted to emulate these people,
Yeah.
right? And so I grew up in an environment where violence, drugs, womanizing was glorified, and working hard, getting an education, being successful, social mobility were seen as things that were not attainable and weak.
It's a tough combo.
That's how I grew up.
Yeah. Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong, it sounded like you got through McLaren Children's Place
Mhm.
and juvenile CYA.
Mhm.
And then was there a time when you were out for a little while and during that time you met and ended up murdering Reese?
Yes.
Or, okay.
Yes.
So how long a time was that gap?
About 4 to 5 months.
Oh my gosh, Sharif, that's,
About 4 to 5 months.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And and so you went on to adult institutions at that point, right?
I was arrested 2 days after, no, the next day after I murdered
Mm.
Reese, I was arrested.
Yeah.
And I was placed in Los Angeles County Jail.
Mm.
I spent about a year and a half, maybe 2 years well, a year and a half. No, yeah, 2 years in Los Angeles County Jail.
Mm.
And no, excuse me, I apologize. A year and 2 months in Los Angeles County Jail.
Okay.
I was sentenced to state prison. I was immediately transferred to prison.
And so talk a little bit about California's prison system and the levels. This may be familiar to some of you who work in prisons or volunteer in prisons, but just in case. Okay, so talk about the levels and what they mean
So,
briefly.
yes, so California prisons have 4 levels.
Mhm.
Level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Um, Level 4 was considered the highest maximum security.
Yeah.
But even within level 4, you had two different types of maximum
Mm.
security. You had the level 4 180, which was the ultimate in maximum security. And then you had the 270 design, which kind of was like a lower security, but it was still maximum security.
Okay.
These were
Mm.
places, the level 4 was designed for individuals that were just coming into prison that had lengthy, extreme long sentences.
Okay.
And so people with life without parole, uh, Buck Rogers dates,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Mm.
People that were just getting released from the security housing unit for
Yeah.
various criminal acts. The prison gang members, the level 4 180 and the level 4 270s, those were the facilities that housed the most dangerous people. And then the lower, yes,
The 180 and 270 have to do with the design of the prison
yes, yes.
levels,
Right.
yard.
So the 180 design is designed for an officer in the security
There we
tower
go.
to have a 180-degree view at all times of individuals being housed.
Thank you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Whereas the 270 design,
Mm.
the tower can have a 270-degree view.
Mm.
So the 180-degree view makes it easier for the officer to have more control over the population.
Right.
Right. And one thing that stands out to me is when I walked into the reception center, right? The reception center is everyone is housed there. It doesn't matter if you have 6 months to do, 500 years to do. Everyone was placed in the reception center, and in the reception center, that's where you're classified and determined. Okay, you're level 4, you're level 3,
Oh,
you're level
wow.
2, and we're going to send you to these different
Yeah.
prisons.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into the reception center and seeing a sign on the wall, warning, no warning shot.
Oh, good grief.
I said, huh? It was in red, bold red, warning, no warning shots.
Yeah.
And I asked what that means, and I learned that the officers in the tower have Mini 14 rifles. And the way it's designed is that if you get into a altercation with another individual, if you raise, and that's how I was taught, if you're fighting, don't make it look like you're stabbing them.
Oh,
Because the minute they see stabbing motions, they can blow your head off.
oh, good
Right.
grief.
So that was my initial experience in prison.
Yeah.
And then transferring to the level 4 180 and Tehachapi. And my first night in that prison, I'm listening to my next door neighbor rape and murder his son.
Oh, man.
So that was my initial experience in prison.
Sorry.
It was an interesting time at that time.
Yeah. And then you and I ended up meeting at California Institution for Men in Chino. As the introduction said.
Yes.
Level 2,
Mhm.
level 1,
Yes.
and college
Yes.
classes,
Yes.
and lots of classes as well as groups.
Yes.
So how far along were you, and what were you like at that point?
By the time I met you,
Mhm.
that was when I was like really, really deep into taking my growth seriously. I did not want to go to Chino at all. At all. I hated Chino. when I first got there. I didn't want anything to do with Chino.
Had a terrible reputation from
Terrible
earlier
yes.
years.
But that's where I had the most growth in my life. I encountered good brothers on A yard. With C yard is where everything really changed for me. You know, I encountered my sponsor, Fred Griffin. Um, he really, that's the one individual, right, that's in the incarcerated population. Him, a brother named Dwayne West, that I was in Los Angeles County Jail with. They literally loved me through my mess. Because I was very angry. I was still dealing with a lot of anger inside of me over things that had happened to me. But it was brothers like them that made a decision to say, what happened to you? Tell the truth. Stop living in shame. It's okay to be angry. And I started answering those questions. That's what makes it easy for me to share my story now. It's because the work I did with them, working step 4 and step 5 through them, made it easy for me to tell my story now. But in addition to that, I had already seen you all the time around the yard. I heard about you from the day I went to Facility C. And we would say hi and bye every now and then. But I remember in 2023, when I was working in the library, something compelled me to come, excuse me, something compelled me to come talk to you. And I just walked outside and I started sharing my story with you.
Boy, I remember that day really clearly because I'm small and you're tall, to be blunt. And
yes,
you have a great reputation there because you were the law clerk and you were helping people with their cases. And helping them understand documents and all of that. Which is really commendable, I want to say. So how did we come to know one another?
So that day, that was my next to last semester in Chaffey College. And they had already set the graduation date. I had introduced myself to you. I explained to you that the reason why I wasn't participating in your programs was because I was in college and there was a conflict. But I am doing the work. This is my story. This is what I'm trying to do in my life. Can you please attend my graduation? That's how it started. And you said, yes, I will attend your graduation. And you attended my graduation. You heard my speech, my valedictorian speech. And after that, you invited me to participate in your grief and loss support training to become a grief and loss support professional on the facility. And then every quarter, the grief and loss program had a memorial, which allowed incarcerated individuals to speak on loss in their own lives and to memorialize the people that they've lost. And you also created a format that representatives from different faiths on the facility can speak on what grief and loss means to them according to their individual faith perspectives. And I gave the speech on behalf of the Muslims, and you basically told me, volunteered me, you were speaking on behalf of the Muslims from this point forward. And so at every memorial thereafter, until I was released, I spoke on behalf of the Muslims as far as grief and loss.
And you did a superb job, I have to say. And what's funny, I remember the valedictorian of his graduating class, right? So you started speaking without notes.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And then you stopped and you blanked out. I have never seen such poise I have in my entire long life, but very rarely. I've rarely seen the poise, especially that you showed in front of the warden, all the brass from the prison, all the poobahs from the Chaffey College, and your fellow graduates. You stopped, you said, "Excuse me, I need a moment." You breathed and you started over because you wanted the flow of connection to be in their minds perfectly. That was really impressive.
Thank you.
Kudos for you. That takes a lot of self-control and a lot of poise. So about a little context here. About 10 years ago, California's governor, Gavin Newsom, changed the mission of California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation from punishment to education. And restorative justice falls under that that rubric of education.
Mhm.
So, what did that mean for you in terms of what you turned to in restorative justice? You'd already been learning about it and practicing it, but what did that shift mean for you?
It meant that California was finally deciding to get on the train that had already left the train station. And I say
Yeah.
that because you were already practicing restorative justice long before the prison system recognized, hey, there's value in these practices and principles, right? What it means for me is that it meant a paradigm shift. It represented a paradigm shift in how, one, the incarcerated individuals were being treated, but then two, how do we begin the process of the community perceiving individuals who have caused harm?
So,
Yeah.
so if you had to say three words that what does restorative justice mean to you? Give us three words that summarize that and explain why you've chosen them.
I would say accountability,
Yeah.
number one. Accountability, transparency, right? And acceptance.
Ooh, okay. Accountability makes sort of sense to me because it's so fundamental, although you should speak about it, but talk about the other two.
So transparency.
Yeah.
A lack of transparency is the very essence of a lack of restorative justice. Because at the end of the day, if I've caused harm, I should be transparent enough to say, I caused this harm. This is why I caused this harm. And this is what I'm doing to ensure that I don't cause this harm again. Because transparency means I'm an open book. If I'm trying to reintegrate into a community that I've harmed, I need to be open and transparent enough about myself so that the community can see me for who I am today and build it, which would help them feel safer about accepting me back into their community. But if I'm secretive, if I'm keeping things close to my vest, have I really changed? Am I really trying to repair the damage that I've caused?
Yeah.
That's why I run away from individuals who tell me, don't talk about the fact that you're incarcerated, that you were incarcerated. People don't have to know that. Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
Because if I don't share this and they find out, they're going to be looking at me a different way.
Thank you.
In my opinion.
May I hold the third thought? I want to tell you all a quick story about joining Sharif as he went to get a car. We went to this car dealership, and long story short, Sharif was able to buy a car. So we're sitting there, and Sharif feels compelled to share with the closer, the guy who's doing all the financial stuff, to share his story. And I'm sitting there thinking, this man hasn't even been out for a year, right? And he's telling someone he doesn't even know who's responsible for the financing of the car that he's buying, his story. And this man was so moved, he pretty much jumped across the desk and hugged you at the end, and then gave Sharif $100 bill so that we could go to lunch together. I was flabbergasted. May there be more such generous souls to hearing the stories such as yours. Yeah. So go back to talking about choose your third word.
Acceptance.
Yes, acceptance.
Acceptance has two different perspectives, two aspects. Acceptance of myself, right? And not no longer living in shame. Acceptance of the fact that I did what I did, I caused harm and I'm responsible, but also accepting those who choose not to accept me and not feeling any way about it. And also being prepared and working hard so that my community that I harm can accept me back into the community and feel safe. So that's what acceptance means to me.
Thank you. That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. So how would you summarize what restorative justice means for you today? How important is it in your daily life? you're studying, you're studying coursework that is not restorative justice. You're studying liberal studies, as I recall.
Yes.
So how do you practice restorative justice?
Unconditional love.
Mm.
Recognizing that individuals, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you are better than the worst decision you ever made. Showing grace to individuals the way that God has showed me grace. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Practicing the love that God showed me when he gave me a second chance.
What happens if somebody disrespects you?
Oh, I definitely get angry. I feel hurt. I feel rejected. I feel ashamed. I feel sad. But that's it. I leave it at my emotions and I acknowledge my emotions for what they are. And I make a decision that, unlike who I was when I was 18, I'm in control of my emotions. No one controls my emotions but me. And if I allow myself to act on those emotions, then my emotions become my God besides God.
Mm.
That's how I deal with disrespect. It hurts,
Yeah.
but I express that it hurts and I leave it at that. Keep on moving.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap up our talk time here. But if you would say one thing to the audience that's on this webinar, what would you say about knowing restorative justice and practicing it?
It works.
Mm.
I would argue that restorative justice is the only thing that works. We've tried everything else. We've executed innocent people. We've
Yeah.
executed guilty people. We've built hundreds of prisons across the country. We've locked people up for decades. But what have we gotten in return?
Mm.
Are our communities safer? What is our return on investment for mass incarceration? There is none.
Yeah.
But look at me.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one. There are so many individuals out here in our communities navigating these spaces in a healthy way, leading discussions, leading the charge for change.
Yeah.
And they've committed harm just like me.
Mm-hmm.
And they're accountable just like me. So I would argue that restorative justice works if you just simply practice it.
Yes.
Simply choose to love individuals the way God loved you.
Yeah.
Practice what Jesus said. Look, how many times should I forgive my brother? You should forgive your brother 70 times, 70 times. 70 times 7, 70 times 7. That means it's unlimited.
Yeah.
Because God never gave up on us.
Amen.
So that's my point of view on this.
Thank you so much. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you, Nora, for such a challenging and I have to say difficult. Sharif, we are very mindful and aware of how hard it has been this life process, and we are very thankful for your honesty and the way you have answered Nora's questions. And let's now open the dialogue for Q&A. There are some questions that have been posted in the chat, and I want to address them as they have arrived to that function. The first one is if you can tell us a bit about what led you down the path of legal advocacy. That is a question coming from Jared Villeri. Tell us about what led you down the path of legal advocacy.
So it started in 2006. So I was still minimizing my behavior. I was still trying to appeal my criminal conviction, knowing that I was guilty, but I was still trying to appeal. My father had gotten released from prison, and my father was a well-known paralegal and legal mind, and he agreed to take my case. But in the time of taking my case, he went back to prison. And so I'm in the federal court. I'm drowning. I don't know what to do. So I decided to start picking up a legal book. Like, I'm going to do it myself. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it myself. And then one day, my next door neighbor gave me a book that changed my life. It was called it was from Gilbert Law Summaries, and it was called Legal Research, Writing, and Analysis. I read that book and I was forever changed because I learned that I don't have to know everything there is to know about the law. I just need to know how to find it. I just need to know how to find it, and I need to know how to properly analyze it and learn how to write in a way to persuade a judge. And I haven't looked back ever since.
Mm.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Um, and along with that, I just want to introduce a question from myself. Um, as the National Benevolent Association wants to continue developing its restorative justice work, if you can give NBA or any other church, nonprofit organization, or individual that wants to be committed to the restorative justice work in our criminal legal systems, what could be your advice in terms of the contents of that ministry, or the best ways to achieve a restorative justice within our work and our witness?
That's a loaded question, but I'm going to try my best to answer it. The first and most important thing that I would encourage everyone to do is examine your own motives. How do you view individuals who have committed harm? Are these individuals capable of repairing themselves and repairing the harm that they've done? Are they capable of that? Right? I would, and if you're, whatever your answer is, then ask the next question. What would God say about this? What does your Lord say about restorative justice? And are your beliefs consistent with how your Lord sees restorative justice? Okay, that's number one. Number two, restorative justice is not easy. It's the most difficult of work because you're going to have to sit in spaces and you're going to have to hear horrible stories. You're going to have to deal with a lot of anger, a lot of resentment that is trauma based, right? And you're going to have to learn how to sit in those spaces and not take things personal as individuals who have committed harm work through the harm that they've caused. That is why, to this day, I'll never forget Fred Griffin. I will never forget brothers like Jared Villery. I will never forget Dwayne West. I will never forget Nora because they saw me at my worst. Because I had to hit rock bottom before I started to rise up. And it was an ugly process. It wasn't easy, and it still isn't easy. If you don't, ask yourself, do you have the capacity to show that type of love through this process? If you don't, that's okay. That's okay too. You simply, because God gives everyone their different qualifications, their different gifts. Not this type of work is not for everyone, but if you can't do the work yourself, heavily invest in those who are, right? Heavily invest your resources, your time, your effort into those who are. Pour into people who are doing this work because I am proof positive that restorative justice works if done correctly. I'm proof positive of it. So that's how I would answer
Thank you very much, Sharif. But maybe one follow-up question slash observation, because of course you are a successful example of restorative justice from the perspective of somebody that has been incarcerated, and you already mentioned all of the dynamics of anger, guilt, the way you were raised, the social environment where you were raised, and confronting all of the structural injustice that has been part of your life. I want to take a look at the other part of the equation,
it.
uh, talking about victims and families of victims. And I am aware that this can be a difficult question, but how we can deal, if by any chance you have had that experience, or ways then to address those who have been hurt, and how they are as important in the equation as the person who has been incarcerated because of the criminal justice system. Uh, what should be our view and our approach and even our mercy, even in terms of the families of the one affected by crime, how to address and how to include them in the restorative justice equation.
Yeah.
Hmm. I remember the day I was sentenced. Miss Odell Sims walked to the podium and told the judge, if he did this, she said, if I did this, because so close was I to her, it was beyond her imagination that I was capable of taking her daughter from her. Right?
Mm.
She was still in a state of denial and loss. But she said, if he did this, I want you to do everything in your power to ensure that he doesn't do this to another person's daughter, because this doesn't make sense and I can't move forward with my life. I just want to take the time to honor and acknowledge the people who have been harmed, because they are the most important part of this process, even more important than me. They are more important than me. They are the center of this process. They are the ones that need the most help, because they are the ones that were harmed and experienced the loss. And so centering them in this process is critically important. And that's where the criminal justice system has failed, is that they don't center the survivors of crime.
Mm.
I don't like the word victim. Nora doesn't either. All right? We don't use the word victim. We use the word survivor. Okay. The survivors of harm have not been centered in this process. Their opinions have not mattered. Their thoughts have not mattered. And at the end of the day, I would center them in this process. I would get their opinions. I would get their input. Um, but I would eventually try to work for a process where the survivors of crime and those who caused the harm can come together and have a dialogue that is not controlled, right? That is not mitigated in any way. Here's the space, have the dialogue, right? And give the survivors the space to feel how they feel, however they want to feel, believe however they want to believe, but then the person that caused the harm have the capacity to sit there and accept that, because that's part of restorative justice. Why do I say that? If I was to ever sit in front of Rishi's mother, I have the capacity now to hear her call me every ugly name under the book. I hate you, you deserve to die, all of that. And she has a right to feel that way. And I have a responsibility to sit in that and hear her say that. It's my responsibility. Every last one of us that cause harm, that is our responsibility. To have the capacity to respect the survivors of our harm. And that's one way of doing it, in my opinion.
Thanks, Sharif.
Thank you, Sharif. Thank you very much for this powerful and merciful and wow. I am just without words, my friend and brother, because this system has been dehumanizing
It has.
the humanity, bringing the, the, the needed communion of people has
Yes,
Mm.
been kind of kidnapped by the state
yes,
and alienating all of that human process,
yes,
you know, of healing, forgiveness, mercy, and try to deal with the accountability of 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 every people to each other, as neighbors that we are. Nora, please.
Just to say systemically that there needs to be, if we want to do something about mass incarceration and start pulling back all of the money we put into it. Let's redirect that money into a stronger system of support and care for survivors, because I work on that side of the street as well as a pastor. And so it's very challenging because there are offices for survivors' rights in every county in California and the state itself, but it's a few people. There are not folks designated to walk with people who have been harmed and to take care of them if they're re-triggered by hearing a webinar like this, for example.
Yes.
And so the whole system needs to make this shift. And it's my prayer that, one community maybe, or 5 communities around the United States can undertake this intentionally as a social experiment, if you will. And churches and people of faith and mosques have a great responsibility and opportunity there for helping with that, to rectify that imbalance.
That imbalance, definitely, definitely. Donna Green wrote a question that it is part of also of the ones that I wanted to share with you, Sharif. She's saying you and your story are a blessing for this world. Can you share if or how your faith has been part of your journey? And that is one of the most interesting things I always found about sharing with you, Sharif, because you mentioned Jesus, you mentioned Christianity, you mentioned, the Christian faith, and gives examples, and even examples from the scriptures. Can you please tell us something about your faith, please?
Well, I think the name gives it away. I'm a Muslim. Um, I submitted and became a Muslim 20 something years ago, about 24 years ago, but I wasn't fully practicing. Now, why do I say that? Right. I was the person that Jesus referred to with the Pharisees and the Sadducees. You do the ritual things, but the faith is not really in your heart. I was still dealing with anger, still deal with it to this day. But the difference is that I allow over the years, as I began to look at myself in the mirror, as I began to um, unpack the reasons why I was harming people, I started looking at my faith and I stopped hiding behind God to justify my evil deeds. And that's what I was doing. So my faith helped me because one, I started praying instead of fighting. Right. I started fasting instead of using drugs and alcohol and womanizing. So my faith help bring me out of that ugliness of who I was at 19 years old, 20 years old. And it also gave me a love for education.
Mm.
It gave me a love for God and wanted to know God for who he is. Right. So it gave me that. It gave me a sound spiritual foundation from which I was able to accept education when it came my way, accept restorative justice, and practice those principles when it comes my way, because that's essentially my faith. My faith is restorative justice.
Mm.
Right. So that's what I have to say about that.
Amen.
Sorry, one more thing. It also gave me a desire to fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves.
Yeah.
I have a soft spot in my heart for people who are oppressed. So,
Amen. So, Donna, I think that your question was answered. And Anne Gregory asked if your process, as you speak of steps, if they are related in any way to the 12-step movement.
yeah, yes, they are. Yes, they are. But I practice the 12-step program through Criminals and Gang Members Anonymous, but they're all the same, right?
uh,
And the so yes, step one, right? acknowledging that I was powerless over my addictions to all forms of criminality, and that my addiction had caused my behavior to become unmanageable. My life had become unmanageable. Step two, becoming willing to believe that a power greater than myself can bring me out of this cycle of insanity. Right.
Mhm.
Uh, so yes, as I progress through the steps, absolutely, it's my faith in a nutshell. But the hardest steps for me, the two most hardest steps I've ever done in my life was step four and step five.
Yep.
Conducting a fearless moral inventory of myself, documenting my wrongs and the good that I've done, and admitting to God, to myself, and to someone I trust the exact nature of my wrongs. Those were the two hardest processes that I've ever gone through. But it was also the most beautiful because it caused me to come out of shame. Because as I was sharing this evil that I had done, this ugliness of who I was, receiving the unconditional love from my sponsor, um, okay, has a look on my face changed? You've shared some ugly stuff with me. Has a look on my face changed? No, exactly. Uh, exactly. And it just changed something in me.
Mm.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of the people that have been part in this webinar, that could be related to the 12-step movement. Then, you can witness how the 12-step movement has been useful for Sharif's process. Sharif, what part of the restorative justice process challenged you the most? If you can think about some of your experiences, what has been the most challenging thing as you have been participating to restorative justice practices and living that process within your life?
Reintegration,
Why?
because even right now, I still feel rejected. I still feel unaccepted. Um, I'm still not living up to the fullness of my gifts because people simply won't accept me into their communities or into their spaces to allow me an opportunity to, for example, get a job where I can do this work. I'm forced to work graveyard shifts because of the rejection that I'm experiencing right now. Even on campus, I feel out of place. Why do I say that? Just last week, I gave a speech on last Friday, at the Criminal Justice Department, to criminal justice graduates to encourage them to not lose their humanity as they go on to become law enforcement professionals. Um, and before that, I spoke at the graduation ceremony for the individuals in my major. That after the ceremony concluded, I felt completely out of place, like I didn't belong. And the only people I could find myself identifying with were the professors. I couldn't identify with my students or anyone else. So that's been challenging for my reintegration is the constant rejection that I feel that I experience and just feeling out of place, socially awkward. And that's one of the impacts of long-term incarceration. When you take a child, when you take a 13-year-old child, incarcerate that child in solitary confinement for all of his teenage years,
Yeah.
and then to release that child into the community and he commits violence 4 months later, and then lock him up for 25 years, how do you expect him to have these social skills to navigate? So everything that I eat, all the things but despite all of that, God has still been merciful to me, even through all this ugliness that I'm experiencing right now. He's still been merciful to me.
But dude,
Yes.
you need to tell the very final story of what happened at that criminal justice graduation ceremony about the Redondo Beach police officer.
Oh, there is that.
There is that.
There is that. So after I gave the speech, an officer in full gear, body cam, on duty, walked up to me, gave me a hug, and started crying. He said, I almost didn't come to this speech. I almost didn't come, but someone told me to show up, and now I'm glad I did. I needed to hear what you just said, and I appreciate you. So
And in a nutshell, what did you talk about?
I spoke about trauma-informed policing. Um,
Mm.
so one example, if I can, it's a little off script. Well, if there is a script, there is no script, but you know what I mean. Off topic. I was speaking about trauma-informed policing. And so I gave a scenario. I said, officer, so let's say you and another white officer, you guys are driving in a police cruiser and you see a black guy or you see me, I'm on a bike, and your partner decides to just pull me over. Now, the normal interaction is you racist ass police, why you stopping me, blah, 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 blah. But someone like me, who's now more trauma informed and I understand how trauma works, I'm not going to look at you as racist. I'm going to ask you I'm going to comply with your rules. I'm going to do everything you tell me to do. But then at the end, I'm going to say, now you know I did nothing wrong to be pulled over, but that's okay. I just have a question for you, officer. What happened to you in your life, right, that reminded you of someone like me that triggered you to want to pull me over?
Mm.
See the difference in response?
Definitely, sure.
Because it's not about racism, it's about trauma. And I
About
would even go
trauma.
a step deeper. Any person that's racist have been traumatized. Think about this. Think about the children in the South that their parents forced them to attend lynchings, forced them to watch a black man being strung from a tree and having his genitalia cut off and burned. Children having to watch that. We don't talk about the fact that that's traumatic in and of itself. And that affects our behavior moving forward. But because we're not having trauma-informed communication, um, we have this side and we have that side, rather than just saying trauma is trauma. Regardless of the color of your skin, trauma is trauma. So restorative justice works even as a fight against racism. Restorative justice works in that arena as well. So, and when I told him that, it shocked him. And I encouraged him. I said, stop relying on your psychologist. When you experience especially violent incidents as an officer, if you don't process it, if you don't talk about it, it's going to inform your view moving forward.
There you
And
go.
it's going to cause you to be biased towards people of a certain color. But rather than relying on your psychologists and your peer support specialists and all these other people, do what we do in prison. He said, what? We form healing circles. Most of my growth came from what we did for ourselves. No prison official helped heal me. The people around me helped me heal me. And it started with our healing service. Hey, officer, give us an hour in this room, man. We need an hour in this room. Just get out the way. We got you. Good. You're good. Let's just have that room. And we go in this room, we get in a circle, and we process our crap.
hmm hmm And I can tell you that I was a witness of one of the healing circles at
Oh my
Chino.
gosh.
uh, uh, and seeing all of you dealing with something that caused conflict
Yes.
between those people incarcerated, the kind of discussion, the openness,
Mhm.
Yes.
all of them bringing their hearts, their souls, their thoughts.
Yes.
Uh, was so powerful, and I think that our society needs more spaces like that, more spaces to process grief, to process harm, to process uh, feelings, and to discern and to see how we can move forward as a society,
Yes.
humanizing our relations, trying to put ourselves in the shoes of our neighbor and trying to understand their processes. I think that what you just have mentioned, Sharif, is so powerful and can define so much the kind of justice that we seek
Yes.
uh, uh, from justice, from justice seeking, in our societies. Sometimes we are very much trapped into the issues, into the maybe the tip of the iceberg, what we can see,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Yes.
and and, and we have all of this
Yes.
blindness into
Yes.
what is underneath the suffering and the oppression
Yes.
that we experience,
Yes.
and again we dehumanize ourselves, and I think that humanizing thing and this particular human approach to justice is very much needed in societies like the one that we're living in.
And Luis, is there time for me to add something to that whole story?
Absolutely, please go ahead. Of
Okay.
course.
So that particular incident involved one person in the circle. So it was the second meeting of this class. So they had not been together long. They'd known one another
Was I
from
there for that
yard.
class?
Yes, you were.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
yeah, you remember the
Okay.
word. So
Okay.
so a particular word was used, and one of the circle members understood it to be a racial slur. And so that came up toward the end of the very first session. So it was my decision as facilitator that we would start and hold the second session, even though you were there visiting Angel Luis.
Yeah.
So like, I have no idea what's going to happen here, but follow
Yeah.
the principles, follow the process of what's called restorative conferencing. So I pulled out the key participants and said, this is what I'd like us to do. Are you all up for it? Particularly because the person who used the term it needed to know in advance, because there is the potential for shame and then otherizing in all that. And we just went through, and the process is that every person, so the facilitator repeats what the violation was to the community. And
Mhm.
then we go around, and every single person talks about how he or she feels about that incident. And so it took the whole time. But at the end, the person, you always leave the person who spoke offensively or was the harmer, leave that person to last. And so when it got to him, he just said, I feel really ashamed. It's like, okay. And then the wise facilitator knows to hold the silence so that it just like
Uh-huh. Decompress.
decompress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, but these are, for those of you who think it's magic, it's not magic. It's
Mhm.
learning the skills and practicing them first with a practitioner who's teaching you and can let you feel it and go through it, and then practicing it, which is why I'm so
And training.
grateful. Yeah.
And training.
And
And that is why we as MBA want to develop this restorative justice initiative.
yeah.
Please, you that have been part of this webinar, you know, um, let us continue in contact to see how we can grow, how can we educate ourselves to develop, communities of mercy, of acceptance, of accountability within the places where we live, schools, work, colleagues, organizations. This is part of the discussion, definitely. And because as you're saying, Nora, it's not magic. And of course we believe in miracles. We believe in miracles, but this is a miracle that we need to build together.
Yeah.
So yes, I was saving a question, maybe that now that we are kind of more into the ending of this webinar, a question that I was saving for this moment from Reverend Jan Exdet. What
Good.
are your plans for the future, Sharif? What are your plans for the future?
Um, what I want to do. Remember that word, I. Remember that, what I just told you. What I want to do. Um, I want to be a lawyer. So my goal right now, I'm working towards my bachelor's degree in liberal studies, which I'm projected to earn in May of 2027. Um, a bachelor's degree with liberal studies with a minor in criminal justice. Right afterwards, I plan to take the law school admission test, the LSAT, hopefully get the highest score possible, go to law school, get my law degree, and then take the state bar exam and go from there. So my goal is to be a lawyer. Um, that being said, that being said, I also recognize that God does what he wills. So this is what I want to do. But my plan is to do what God wants me to do.
Having said that, I know what most folks don't, which is that you've already acted as a lawyer on your own behalf. So
Mm.
I brag about this particular thing. So would you talk about the case that went all the way up to the California Supreme Court?
Well, I've had several cases that have gone up to the California Supreme
But
Court.
you know the one I mean, Menefield versus.
Oh, yes. Well, you're talking about the one with the religious meals.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So in 2008, when I was in Kern Valley State Prison, I looked around and I asked a question: Why are Jewish incarcerated individuals receiving special meals, but the Muslims are not? And yet our belief requires us to have certain meals. And so I asked around, and no one really wanted to take up the fight. But the more I thought about it, the more it kept bothering me. So I did some research, and I filed what's called a civil rights complaint under 42 USC Section 1983, which is the Civil Rights Act. I filed it in the Eastern District, U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of California, alleging that the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation was violating the First and 14th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution by telling Muslims that we have to eat what everyone else eats while denying us, while giving it to Jewish incarcerated individuals. And I also used a law called the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act of 2000. So my case was at that time, the Eastern District was swamped with over 19,000 incarcerated lawsuits. So my case was transferred out of that court into the Northern District in San Francisco, and I was assigned Judge Charles Breyer. That name should sound familiar because his brother is Stephen Breyer, U.S. Supreme Court Justice. And so he took my case, he read it one time, he assigned it to his former law clerk at Jones Day law firm in San Francisco, and prior to that, I had filed what's called a motion for preliminary injunction. So
Mm-hmm.
I was asking the judge that in the interim, while this lawsuit is pending, it's almost beyond doubt that I'm going to win this lawsuit. So until then, order CDCR to provide me with kosher meals.
Provided, yeah.
So when the law firm took my case, they went over my writing and they said, "It's amazing that you did this was all with all pen. I've never seen anything like this." So all they did was take what I wrote, put it in what they filed, and the judge granted my motion, ordered CDCR to provide me with kosher meals. CDCR, they wrote a news article on my case out of the Fresno Bee, and they eventually provided halal meals for Muslim incarcerated individuals, still to this day, and they gave me $10,000.
So we're talking about a huge prison system with Muslims in every prison getting the impact of what Sharif filed. Plus, it was nice to get 10,000 bucks for your labors.
That is nice.
Yes.
That's always nice. That's always nice.
Excellent, excellent. So, we are just kind of reaching to our end of this webinar, and we are very thankful for you both, Nora and Sharif. I think that we have been blessed by your ministry and honored by your presence here today. In the chat box, you will find links to websites and contact information so you can visit and learn more from our ministry of creating justice and the challenge to make it happen in our local communities. So please, we encourage you to check our web links and to be involved and stay informed of our work. So please sign up to our newsletter at nbacares.org/newsletter. nbacares.org/newsletter. There are a few check boxes that you can mark to let us know that you're interested in a NBA program topics, specifically justice initiatives from the community engagement program. And we also ask for your support. Your generous gifts help the NBA continue its work of creating communities of compassion and care and supporting justice and equity. We are ever grateful for these blessings. You can donate online at nbacares.com/donate. nbacares.com/donate. As for my friends, Nora and Sharif, is there any final message you would like to share with our audience, please?
You first.
Um, you are looking at an example of the mercy, the grace and mercy of God. Right? You're looking at a living example of restorative justice. Um, you're looking at proof that this works. I would encourage you all to either take these principles and practices into your communities. I would encourage you to invest your time, your resources, everything you can into individuals who are doing this work, because this is how we make our community safer. Not mass incarceration, not warehousing, but relationships. Um, I would just leave you with a reminder of the 5 R's of restorative justice: relationship, respect, responsibility, right? Reintegration,
Repair.
and repair. Repair comes before reintegration. I'm overwhelmed right now, so you got to excuse me if I got some of the words mixed up. But repair, and once the repair work happens, that's when reintegration happens.
Mm.
Right. So take these 5 R's into your communities and put them into practice, and watch how your community transforms. Guarantee you.
Mm. Thank you, Sharif. You know what? Mine would be, we are Pentecost people. And so that moment when the Spirit descends and touches all those people who are so different, not just different in the way they look, but their cultural practices, how they feel about punishment, how they feel about forgiveness, how they feel about compassion, love, second chances, 10th chances. That suddenly was made so much easier by the Holy Spirit coming down and letting them all hear one another, and not just listen to one another, but hear one another and feel it. I believe that's an amazing metaphor for what we as people of faith do, and what restorative justice, because of its values and practices, allows us to do. It may be one person or one group at a time, but honestly, how did Jesus do it? Same way. What if we are all possible ambassadors for Jesus' message of reconciliation and restoration?
And definitely that is our commitment as the National Benevolent Association, to achieve justice, to do mercy, and to be faithful to our steps in front of God.
Mhm.
And that is the invitation that we are doing to all of you as we continue developing restorative justice initiative as part of the work by MBA. So please stay tuned, stay informed, and we will be sharing next steps regarding all of our efforts regarding restorative justice. In the meantime, I know that Sharif will continue his path in life. I am pretty sure that he will be an excellent lawyer. In fact, we have been joking between ourselves. I am a lawyer myself, and we were joking about having a law firm, Menefield, Rivera-Agosto and Associates, defending people. But the same thing as Sharif shared to all of us was my experience too. I had the opportunity to have my private law firm defending workers
Mm.
and different cases from marginalized people. But the key message here is to follow God's will, and I know that Sharif will continue hearing the voice of God and being faithful to whatever God wants to do in his life, influencing other people into justice and mercy. So, Sharif, we are very, very proud of you. We hope to have you in another time as a follow-up of this process. And of course, I need to give you a big hug as I knew you as you were incarcerated in the California Institution of Men. So we owe that hug now that you are a free man, even though you you have been already a free man, even though you were behind bars, because you saw the light of God and of your neighbor. And I think that is a very important thing to state regarding our freedom as human beings. So very proud of you, my friend, my brother. Very proud of you, Nora, of sharing
Thank you.
this walk with you. And people, thank you for your presence. Thank you for being with us. May God bless you always. Dios les bendiga rica y abundantemente. It has been a pleasure. So, blessings to you all, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you all.
Bye bye. Take care.
Bye.